What if food on your plate looks healthy, but it's not food your grandparents knew? What if fruit got sweeter, bigger, prettier, but lost something in the process? And what if the real issue isn't just what we're eating, but how far we drifted from the original design of food? Today we're talking about original foods versus hybrid foods. Not fear, not conspiracy, just a real conversation about what happened to our food. And why so many people feel like the more modern the food becomes, the worse their body responds to it. Because at some point, we have to ask, are we eating food or are we eating a product? Now, let me say this clearly before we go deeper. Not every hybrid food is bad, not every original food is perfect, and not every problem in the body comes down to one ingredient. But if you ever looked at produce today and thought, why does everything look better but feel worse? You're not crazy. Because modern food has been shaped for a market, original food was shaped by nature, season, soil, and survival. And that difference matters. When I say original food, I'm talking about food that stays closer to its original form. Food that hasn't been overly manipulated for appearance, shipping, shelf life, or mass production. I'm talking about foods your people will recognize. Fruits with seeds, bitter greens, smaller produce, deep color, stronger smell, different texture, a shorter shelf life. Food that doesn't always look perfect but feels alive. Original foods had character. They weren't made to impress a camera, they were made to grow in rhythm with the earth. And the crazy part is, a lot of foods people now reject as too bitter, too seedy, too small, or too strange are probably closer to what foods used to be. Original food demanded something from you. It asks you to prepare it, respect it, wait for it, taste it, understand it. Modern culture doesn't like that. Modern culture wants convenience, fast, sweet, soft, seedless, and uniform. Always available, and that demand changed everything. Now on the other side, hybrid foods are foods created by crossing different varieties to get different traits. Usually the goal is not, how do we make this food more natural? The goal is more like, how do we make it bigger, sweeter, redder, more durable, more profitable, easier to ship, more resistant in large-scale farming? That's why so much produce today looks almost too perfect. Same size, same color, same texture, same shape. It looks efficient. But sometimes the question is, efficient for who? Efficient for the consumer or efficient for the system? Because what benefits a grocery chain doesn't always benefit your body. And that's the deeper conversation nobody wants to have. See, this is where I want to go deeper. The issue is just not that food's been crossed or selected. The issue is what priorities was used when shaping the food. Was the food selected for nourishment? Was it selected for money? Was it selected for mineral density? Or was it selected so it can survive being picked early, boxed, stacked, shipped, sprayed, lit up in the store, and still look attractive 2 weeks later? Because food can survive the supply chain and still fail in the body. That's the line. A food can win in the marketplace and lose in the bloodstream. And that's why some people are eating more produce than ever, but still feel off, low energy, constant cravings, never really satisfied, always snacking, always chasing something, because sometimes the body is just not asking for calories, it's asking for life. Have you noticed how many foods today are built around pleasure first? Sweeter fruit, less fiber fill, less bitterness, less complexity, everything engineered towards easy eating. But bitterness had purpose, seeds had purpose, seasonality had purpose, and even the inconvenience had purpose. It forced moderation, it forced patience, it forced relationship. Now food is entertainment, and once food becomes entertainment, you stop asking whether it builds you, you only ask whether it tastes good. That's why people can defend food, because it's popular. While their body keeps sending warning signs, we've been trained to trust our tongue more than our vitality, and that's dangerous. One of the most powerful things about original foods is they often came with limits. They had seasons, they had regions, they had imperfections, they had seeds, they bruised faster, they spoiled faster, and as frustrating as that sounds, those limits protected the relationship. You couldn't have everything all the time. You had to work with what was available. You had to respect timing. Now think about that today. Anything, anytime, anywhere. No season, no connection, no waiting. And when a culture loses the ability to wait, it usually loses wisdom too. And that's just not true with food, that's true for life. More available doesn't always mean more valuable, and food is one of the clearest examples. We upgraded for convenience, we upgraded for scale, we upgraded for appearance. But did we upgrade for life? That's the question. That's why so many people are turning back to seeded fruits, back to bitter herbs, back to local growers, back to traditional varieties, back to seasonal eating, back to learning where foods come from. Not because they're trying to be extreme, not because they want to live in fear, but because deep down people know the body recognizes truth. Sometimes the most healing thing you can do is not add more products, powders, and protocols. Sometimes it's simply returning to food that still feels like food, returning to rhythm, returning to taste that hasn't been over-designed, returning to what the body can actually read, because your body is intelligent. And when you consistently give it things closer to nature, many people feel the difference. Not overnight, but over time. Cleaner energy, less confusion, more connection. Now let me keep this balance. This is not about paranoia in the produce aisle. You don't have to become obsessive. You don't have to think every hybrid is poison, and you don't need perfection to start making better choices. But I do think we need to stop assuming that all produce is equal just because it's sold as healthy. The deeper question should be, how close is this food to its original state? How heavily was it shaped for commerce over nourishment? How does my body respond when I eat it consistently? Do I feel more alive from this food, or is it just temporary pleasing? That's a smarter conversation than simply saying, well, it's fruit, so it must be good. Not all fruit is being grown with the same priorities. Not all foods carry the same energy, and not everything that looks beautiful is building you. So where do you start? Start simple. Pay attention to foods with seeds. Pay attention to foods that are seasonal. Pay attention to traditional varieties. Pay attention to how food actually makes you feel after you eat it. Not just while you eat it, after. Energy, digestion, cravings, mental clarity, recovery. Your body gives you feedback. Most people are just too distracted to listen. And once you start listening, you may realize that the goal is not to chase the most modern version of food. The goal is to get closer to what's real in the first place. So no, this isn't just about original foods versus hybrid foods. This is really about a bigger choice. Do you want food that was designed to survive a system, or food that actually supports life? Do you want food that looks impressive, or food that feels right in the body? Because the more I study this, the more I believe the future of health may actually look like a return. Not backwards, but back to wisdom, back to simplicity, back to foods that still carry the signature of nature. And that might be the most deepest truth of all. Sometimes progress is not about adding more. Sometimes progress is remembering what we lost.